Welcome to the first in a set of tutorials for Architecture 380, Introduction to Computers and Architecture. I'm Rob Corser, the professor for this course, and I'll be leading you through this series of tutorials to get you introduced to the use of various digital modeling tools for use in this course and in the rest of your architectural education. Tutorial 1A is an introduction to Rhino version 5, focusing primarily on its interface, commands, command structure, and screen navigation. Rhino is a NURBS modeling program NURBS stands for Non-Uniform Rational Basis Splines, a mathematical way of defining three-dimensional curves and surfaces that is very efficient for computational purposes and also very intuitive to use as a designer. More information about NURBS in general can be found at on the Wikipedia page that is shown here and that you can see here. NURBS, as I said before, is a very efficient mathematical structure for defining surfaces and curves in three-dimensional space. Rhino is one of the most powerful, flexible, and intuitive tools for designers, and it's used in a variety of industries, including architecture, for advanced 3D modeling and representation of our designs as we explore them and before we document them for construction. When you look at this Wikipedia page, you will see a great deal of information about NURBS, curves, and surfaces. In the lower right-hand corner of the screen, you can see a GIF showing a complex three-dimensional surface rotating around, defined by 36 discrete points in space and the relationships between those points. The points and the grid that they form are the control handles for manipulating this surface. So the surface, which itself is quite complex, is defined only by these 36 points, each of which you could grab and pull and move around, as you'll see when we continue with the tutorials. Let's move to Rhino itself and start looking at the interface for the program. When you open Rhino, this is the screen that you should see when you open it on any of the lab computers in Gould Hall or in Architecture Hall. You will see this interface. The main characteristic that you will see is a 4-viewport working area in the middle. The viewports representing perspective view, top view, in other words, plan, front and right-hand views, with X, Y, Z coordinates being indicated to help you understand whether you're looking at the YX plane or the YZ plane, or looking in three-dimensional space where X, Y, and Z are located in the orientation as shown. Keep in mind that if you are opening this on your own computer or sometimes on a different computer at the university, this screen might look different. If you are a Mac user and have chosen to use the beta version of Rhino for Mac, your screen will look different from this. Many of the tools, the terminology, and the layout will be similar, but there will be differences in exactly how commands are implemented or other aspects of navigation might work. So please keep in mind that if you're using the free beta version on Mac, that your experience will look and feel different from this, but the main functionality of the program will be the same. This tutorial will take you on a tour of the interface for Rhino v5. It is a very consistent and usable interface that offers a lot of information and in fact provides you with a variety of ways to instantiate commands, to control the work that you're doing, to view it differently, and to manage the work that you have underway. I'm going to work around the screen to introduce the interface to you, starting in the upper left and going around the screen to give you an idea of what you're looking at. Like most software, you will find a series of pull-down menus with command structures located beneath each of the pull-downs, starting with file commands, the typical opening pre-existing files, creating new files, saving files, importing, exporting, printing, etc. Following that is a series of editing tools, visibility tools, curve generation tools, surface generation tools, solid generation tools, mesh generation tools, which we'll talk about soon, dimensioning tools, transformation tools to change and adjust things that you've made, and a series of specialized toolbars, including calculators and whatnot, that has an important feature called options at the bottom that I'd like to talk about in a little bit more depth for many of you, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. Analysis tools, rendering tools, etc. The panels that you see of toolbars you can control here, computer-aided manufacturing tools, which we use, rendering tools, and help bars. Let's go back to tools and options. This is important if you're an international student and are used to working in a different set of units than inches and feet. Then you might very well want to change the units with which Rhino works by going to the Tools and Options command, which should open soon. And you'll see in the right-hand window a series of options have opened up. And this interface that I've just dragged in from my other screen will show up where you can set a lot of the basic visibility and functionality settings for Rhino. For instance, you can come here and look for the toolbars, and you can add or take away various toolbars. In this case, I've taken away some of the rendering toolbars in V-Ray that I use so that my workspace looks like the one that you will get. Units is an important one, so you can change the model units that you work with from inches to millimeters, centimeters, or whatever works best for your field of design. Notice that it includes very interesting things like astronomical units, angstroms, nanometers, nautical miles, and whatnot. So you can see the range of applications that Rhino is used for and the range of fields where people use Rhino to design shipping routes, ships themselves, spacecraft. There's a lot of opportunity here. We generally keep this as it comes standard for you in inches, but as I said, if you are more used to working and want to work in metric units, you can also choose that here. Say OK, and adjust the units that you're working with in Rhino. So again, moving from the upper left around the interface for the program, you'll see directly below these pull-down menus, you'll see the command window area. And here you'll find a blinking cursor where commands, whether you select them from a pull-down menu, if I selected a point object and said single point, you would see this area change, and you'd see a record of what you've been doing here showing up above it. This area can be enlarged, so you can see more of the history of the commands that you've entered. And this is an area where you can input specific information via the keyboard, or you can click in one of the viewports to directly enter dimensional location, dimensional data without having to type in. So for instance, I've instantiated the point command, and if I would like to place a point for my own working reference at the origin at XYZ000, I can, because the command is instantiated now and the cursor is blinking here for location of point object, I can type in 0, 0, 0 and hit return, and I've now placed a point without clicking anywhere here in any of the viewports. I've placed a point at 0, 0, 0. The command line is important, and you should get used to looking here as you are working through commands, because many of the commands in Rhino will ask you to make selections about aspects of that command or settings that you can select while you are working within the viewport. And it's very important that you read some of the prompts that are given to you here, so that if it's asking you for dimensional data, if it's asking you to make a choice between one set of options and another, it will show up here in the command line. And sometimes you have to type yes or no or select something from this line in order to successfully complete the command that you want to use. This area is also a place where you can simply type the name of a command. So I can, for instance, type the word line. A series of possibilities pops up. So I can choose line, linear, light, anything that contains the 4 characters LINE, polyline, etc., curve through polyline. They pop up with the most often used and the most expected response as the top one. You can simply hit return to select line, or you could come down below and click on an array of lines if you wanted to take existing design elements and array them across the screen. So I'll just click on line. I could have hit return, and you'll notice that we have, again, a series of options, as I mentioned before, that I can, in this case, click on, right? So for starting of the line, it's asking me for the starting point of the line. Now, there are things that I can select across here, like an angled line, a vertical line, etc. Let's say I click on vertical line. So now I've said that I'm not only drawing a line, I'm drawing a vertical line. And I'm going to select a place to start from the viewport, from the top viewport. I will select the point I created, and I will start drawing a line vertically. And that line is going to have a certain length, and I'll click again to end the line. Now, because it's on the axis, you can't actually see the line. But I'm going to move on from here. Instead of doing more drawing at this moment, I'm going to wait and explain more about the viewport and then come back to drawing lines and other curves within a particular viewport. As we move around, below the command line, you'll see a series of ribbons. Here is a ribbon of tools, little icons. The standard tab has a lot of the functionality that you would find in the file pull down. So saving, opening, etc. Under standard, if you go through these, you see new file, open, save, print, etc. Some visibility and manipulation tools, rotating around the screen, choosing different viewport orientations, etc. And even some rendering styles so that you can see the data in the viewport rendered differently, all exist in this ribbon. These ribbons they contain a lot of complex things. You will eventually learn to use most of these, not all of them certainly, but most of the functionalities, especially in the standard toolbar, which is generally at the top of the screen. Construction planes or C-planes is a way to adjust how you are working within any of the given viewports. When you're drawing in Rhino, you are creating geometry generally associated with a construction plane. And in this case, the screen that we're looking at now, the construction plane in the top view is in the XY plane. You can see that here, and as well in the perspective view. And if I wanted to take one of these viewports, like perspective, and enlarge it, I double click on its name. From the 4 viewports, it becomes the main viewport, and I can zoom in or out with the middle mouse wheel. And you can see that there is a gray grid laid out which represents the construction plane, the plane upon which, if I use any sort of command, I will be drawing lines that will show up not in 3-dimensional space, but upon the construction plane that is currently chosen for this view. The same applies for the other windows. So I'll go back to the top viewport, and I will use the scroll wheel to zoom out. And you can see the polygon that I drew there from the top. We can also see it in the front viewport, if I click there, from the side, in which case it's flat and we see nothing. And the same holds true for the right viewport. But if I were to start drawing now in the right viewport, and I were to draw again some sort of polygon, and then return to my views, you'd see that a polygon has been created, if we look at the perspective viewport, not on the construction plane that I was working with when I made the first polygon, the XY construction plane, but in fact it is shown up on the right construction plane, which is along this green axis. And so I drew it in a different perspective. From the top viewport, you can't see it. From the front viewport, we see both of them, but in end view. And so construction planes are very important, and you can create custom construction planes as your 3-dimensional modeling gets more complex. You will find the need to manage construction planes and to work on construction planes that might exist in 3-dimensional space. Let's say I wanted to make a construction plane from one edge of this to the other in some very odd orientation in order to draw something that would later contribute to my model in an orientation that is not one of the cardinal, X, Y, Y, Z axes. You can certainly do that using construction plane adjustments here. So again, going across the tabs which set up these ribbons, there are view options. So I can select a pan tool in order to pan back and forth. It's rare that you will want to do that because you can pan, zoom, and rotate using the mouse. But you can see rotation, zoom, zoom extents is useful if you get zoomed too far out or you get lost, etc. And you also can change the essential construction plane layout of a given window. For instance, this is now the top window. If I wanted to make it into a perspective window, I could do that. And when I double clicked again, you'd see that I now have 2 perspective windows and no top view window, as you start off with in the typical 4 viewport layout. I can take this one now and I can change my viewport back to a top view, which is what it began as, and go back to finding that as the top in the upper left. And so lots of view tools, display tools. This has to do with how a viewport is rendered. And what you see, how the shading of things. We have no surfaces, so everything is showing up as wireframe since we only have curves to look at right now. We can use selection sets in the next tab, which are very powerful when you get a lot of information on the screen. For instance, I can select all the points and have it go through. If I had more than one, it would select all of the points, and I could then hide them, view them, delete them, etc. And so you have ways of selecting and filtering through the information, the data that's within your model with your selection sets. We can adjust the viewport layout. If we don't want a 4 viewport layout, we could make a 3 viewport layout like that. And if that fits your working style better than the standard 4 viewports, go ahead and do that. I do recommend that you always use multiple viewports because it can become ambiguous when you are working in a particular way that you might not be sure exactly what you're selecting or what plane it's in or where your construction planes are if you have only a single viewport going, a perspective viewport, let's say. So the 4 viewport layout, which is standard, is great to work with, and you can always double click on a view to make it the main view and then go back. Moving across, we have some visibility sets, which are a bit more complex. Transformation tools, if you want to rotate things, copy them, array them, etc. And we'll talk much more about all of these tool sets later. Curve drawing tools, we can draw curves of different types. I could create, these are adjustment tools, not creation tools. We have surface tools where we can create surfaces, manipulate them, etc. Solids, which are a special class of surfaces we can work with. Meshes, rendering tools, drafting tools where we can add specific dimensioning or callouts to things that are intended to be two-dimensional drawings, drafting. And then a nice tab called New in V5. For those of us who've been using Rhino since version 3, you can find a lot of fun new things here that are very useful tools that they want you to be able to find and acknowledge as something that's new, like the gumball tool, which is a pretty advanced and useful way to navigate within a 3D view. We're not going to go into that right now. But these ribbons are useful and powerful, and you should get to know some of what's going on here. Again, they duplicate information that is available in the pull-down menu.